Hello? Hello?
Podcast Network Asia.
Because I don't know when else I can squeeze in a question like, do you like pineapple on your pizza? You know, things like that. So do you?
Sometimes it's not my favorite, but I'm not completely anti. I won't throw anybody out the door because they brought it in my house. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
What are you watching on Netflix right now? Do you even have time to watch Netflix?
I do. I take the time to do it because I do like to decompress from time to time. I'll watch occasionally like Korean dramas with my wife if she has them on, but for the most part, I use that just to try to learn.
What is the best fashion advice that you ever got?
Fashion advice.
I mean, if you guys are on YouTube right now, Instructor Aaron is wearing pink, okay? And I always admire men who rock pink. It's awesome.
It's a good color for me. I don't know. It matches my skin tone.
You know what? It is. It brings out like the blush in you or something. It's
Only
nice.
I think that was you guys. You guys bringing out the blush in me.
Hey, Doritos. I don't know why I said it like that. No, I know, because today's episode is a little different. We haven't really done an episode where we got alone time with Instructor Aaron. We're gonna get that today. I mean, Instructor Aaron has been on the show now for, I don't know, I'm not really counting, but it's been a couple of months, Instructor Aaron, right?
Yeah. It's been fast though, really fast, to be honest.
Yeah. And we've always had a friend join us, but today we thought that maybe we can just, do like a one-on-one, because I feel like we don't really get to talk when we're not recording the podcast. And we love these conversations with you. And we thought like, hey, why don't we do like a little more personal episode? I mean, we have a question that's coming in from a listener today as well, and we'll get to that. But yeah, it's alone time. QT, quality time with Instructor Aaron today.
You got me nervous. Yeah, I'm all nervous.
On the hot seat, Instructor Aaron.
No, you know what? That is actually how I feel about maybe like, I wonder if Instructor Aaron feels like we're constantly grilling him on the show. Has that been your experience on the show so far?
I wouldn't say grilling, but definitely using. I mean, and I think that's important. That's why I want to be here, right? I don't want to be just here for my looks, right? No, I'm just kidding. But I want to be useful. So if you guys, really want to ask questions, I'm definitely okay with some of the more difficult questions. If I can answer it clearly, then great. Sometimes I feel like, there's so much to explain, so I'm talking, quite a bit. So that's why I do like the questions, because it breaks it up a little bit. And then you guys maybe can kind of touch the hearts of the people that are listening too, because I'm sure they have, similar questions at times. So no, I don't feel like you guys are grilling me. You guys are nice. I like being here.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah.
Like show the people we're just normal, right? We're normal people. I promise, right? We're just average people that are just happen to believe in this thing that's really happening at this moment. So it kind of helps to show that it's not, you don't have to be anything special to actually believe in this. Just like at the time of the first coming, it was the same, right? It wasn't anybody special that decided they wanted to believe in Jesus. It was really just anybody, like average people. And I think that sometimes when people first find out about Shincheonji, or they find about, some of the things that have been going on, they might have a tendency to have these, misconceptions about the type of people that are a part of it. So that's one thing that I'm actually thankful for, especially for this. I'm really thankful to you guys for, allowing me to show I am just a normal person. I promise. Well, maybe they don't think I am. I don't know. I don't know what they think of me, to be honest.
Funny you say that about the first coming, because remember, Sam, when we were first studying, and I was like, man, what if we lived during the first, the time of the first coming, and then there was Jesus trying to preach, and he's just like an average Joe. I mean, I was like asking Sam, what kind of friend would I have been to her back then? Would I be like, hey, let's go listen to the guy, or totally judging Jesus by his looks because he's like average Joe?
I mean, below average Joe, if we go by scripture, right?
Yeah, not very attractive, apparently. That's what it says. Just, regular guy, right? Regular guy. So
do you has that been your experience as well? Because as you were mentioning earlier, I think a lot of people, because they've never heard of this church, or maybe when they get a little bit into the things that you guys are proclaiming, or when you share your understanding, because some of it is not, maybe it kind of deviates a little bit from what has been taught.
Sure. Yeah.
for a long time. And so, have you been on the receiving end of that kind of, I don't know if persecution is too strong a word, but let's just say persecution.
Oh yeah, I think most people at some point that I've talked to has something, whether it's from family or friends or even work or things like that. I've been blessed enough not to have, too much harshness, I would say. I didn't have people physically trying to abuse me, but there was,
Oh gosh, I hope not.
being, yeah, I know it's happened. It's happened. We've had actually, there's been people that have been, there's 4 cases in particular that are talking about people that have died that are part of Shincheonji as a result of persecution. So it's something that we talk about, from time to time to try to make that known. A lot of it had to do with what's called coercive conversion. That's a whole nother, crazy thing that we could talk about. Luckily, that's been tapering off, here in Korea. It's not something that is, as active as it was. But the persecution itself, I mean, being here in Korea, I have had people, yell at me. I've had them spit in our direction. I mean, crazy things like that.
That is not true. Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've even had somebody on the, I think it was was it on the bus or was on, no, I think it was on the subway when they found out somehow, or they heard us, something like they were across me going, like giving me a cross, and like I was a vampire.
Wait, people actually do that in real life? Like that?
Yes. Yeah. I
Oh
know, right?
my gosh.
I know. And that's just those type of things when there's like demonstrations going on or things like that. I've been a part where we've walked from point A to point B and there's big demonstrations. They're yelling at us through loudspeakers and, that kind of thing. But then on just an average daily, type of thing that you deal with, it could be, family or friends that maybe they've never, let's say not in Korea, let's just say outside, they've never really heard about it, but then all of a sudden they look it up and they're going to find mostly bad stuff because that's just what's out there right now on the internet. People can just put whatever they want. Most of it has been debunked. A lot of it's anecdotal evidence, what they actually went through. And then they say, oh, well, this is what Shincheonji is, which is just, nonsense. But people, of course, they like all the content. We've talked about this before, right? They like the controversy. People like that kind of stuff. So if your friend or family sees that, then what are they going to do? They're going to try to, quote unquote, save you, right, from this evil cult Shincheonji. So they're going to try to bring you out of it. And if you don't listen to them, then it starts getting to the point where persecution can now, enter. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to start off this, quality time with Instructor Aaron on a persecution note. I mean, we could work up to that, right? But I'm sure there was a time where you first encountered this teaching, you started learning about it, you learned where it was coming from. What was that process like for you?
Even though it was years, it's almost 20 years ago, and I'll still remember exactly what happened. I can see it in my mind, that's how much of a shock it actually is. But when I first started studying, I was really getting into just trying to understand the Bible in many different ways. So I was all into all the numerology and the crazy things that at that time that YouTube wasn't, a big thing, but I was reading, watching tapes and, a lot of, commentary Bibles and things of that nature. I was really just trying to figure it out. Just really wanting to know all about the mysteries of the Bible and things like that. Even the Bible Code. I remember reading the book, The Bible Code, and things of this nature. So when I started learning this, I realized, wow, this is really, really just amazing teaching. But there was times that it was conflicting with what, these fantastical things that I'd learned before. And the way that you have to, kind of approach that is just set it aside, and see which one makes more sense all the way from beginning to end. Because if something that you believe, it makes sense in Genesis, but it doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the Bible at all, it makes absolutely no sense that you look at it that way. And then you see another way to look at it that is consistent all the way through the Bible. Well, then as a logical person, you should be like, okay, that's probably the better way to look at it. So some of those things I had to put aside, but I remember a lot of struggles that I had to go through of learning these teachings, but then something that I had learned before, and then that battle's inside of you. And that really is that spiritual battle. If what you learned before is, not the truth, but is actually a lie, then those words are spirit, right? That's what the word is. The word is spirit. So if you have this, teaching inside of you, that's the spirit, then it's not going to want to leave. Satan doesn't want to just leave the house that he's in. So what did Jesus say? He says, John 15:3, you are clean because the word I have spoken to you. So when you receive the word of truth, that's like the water of life, that you're washing all those false teachings. but it's not an easy thing. Sometimes you got to scrub, right? You really got to wash, because you could be, pretty dirty, pretty filthy in your mind, if you will.
Take a long bath.
Yeah, right.
Candles,
Soak
wine, the works.
and go through it again and again and again. That's why the Ezekiel 47, you got the river. It's ankle deep, knee deep, waist deep, and then so deep that you can't swim across. It really just means continuously washing and understanding.
Wow.
So it was really hard. And by the time I got to, Revelation, I knew that there was something going on. I mean, I'm like, there's no way that you could be explaining Revelation this clearly unless something's going on. So we went and we asked the instructor, and at this time there was much shorter lessons. It was, really compact. And I remember asking, you have to tell us what's going on. There's got to be something going on.
Oh my gosh, you ambushed him.
Her, actually. Yeah, it was
her.
And I remember she took us down and we went to go eat. So we took us downstairs into this really cool little restaurant. We were getting this, this meal, and she's like, okay, I've got to tell you guys, Revelation's actually being fulfilled. And that's why you can understand these teachings and stuff. And I just remember eating, just going, yeah, that makes perfect sense. How else could it possibly have, there's no way that you could be telling me these things unless it's literally happened. So that's why the teachings are so important to be taught in this way, because by the time you get told that truth, you have the ability to believe it, right? If you get hit in the face with it right away, of course, no one's gonna. That's why when people say, oh, why don't you say, be upfront about everything right away? Because honestly, if you walked up and you just said, hey, Revelation's being fulfilled, the promised pastor is here, this, that, and the other.
This is why people go.
Exactly.
I'm like, what is he on? I want something.
Exactly. So the way I like to explain it, it's like setting down a bunch of pillows before you, push somebody and knock them over, because you got to have them something to land on. So if you look back, if you tell them that, and then you look back, they have the ability to be, open-minded and to be able to look back logically at all the lessons. Then they have that ability. But a lot of people don't. It's a very emotional thing. Religion can be a very emotional thing, which it shouldn't be. It should be more logic. Emotion's always there, but it should be more logical. But unfortunately, people don't treat it like science.
No, I mean, they think it's the antithesis.
Right.
That's a tough word for me. Antithesis of
It's a good
science. Okay. Okay, because I guess that kind of answers another question that I had for you, because when we see you share this knowledge on the podcast, you're very calm, you're very logical and rational, and all that stuff. And sometimes I come away from recording and I'm like, gosh, if he really believes that this is the time of second coming and all of this is really happening and this is all true, how can he be so stark raving calm? Because the second coming is a big deal. This is the biggest deal for us believers today, right?
Yeah.
How can he be so calm? And I figured it was because you had all these years to process it. But it sounds to me like by the time you were told, you were just like, that is exactly the answer that I'm looking for. That's got to be it.
Well, I wasn't even looking for it, really, as far as the fulfillment of Revelation or anything. I didn't really concern myself with Revelation at all. I didn't think that the world was going to be around long enough for, me to see it, to be quite honest, the way that the world has been consistently going towards destruction for a long period of time. So in my mind, and, a lot of the scholars at the time, biblical scholars, were like, yeah, the world's coming to an end soon, that type of thing. Maybe part of me is just the demeanor that I have. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's other people that freak out, and I have had the opportunity. There are times, I think sometimes God just suppresses it, because if I had that moment of, being able to freak out, then, I don't think that my emotions could handle if you constantly thought about it. But at the same time, the chairman says that all the time. If you really truly believe this, then you wouldn't be able to not continue to do stuff, right? You wouldn't have to nobody would have to tell you to do the work of evangelism or studying and sealing yourself, or, whatever it is, whatever the volunteer efforts that we're making, the peace work. If you really truly believe what time you're living in, that knowledge and understanding is what, makes you actually do the motions, right? Go through the spirit within you moves the flesh. So I guess that's how I freak out. My freak out is doing this work all the time, that type of thing. But I mean, would it really help anybody? If I was like, the world is the revelation, I don't think it would really help anybody, right? So
Did you ever want to give up at one point? Like, did you ever find it like, this is kind of, I don't know, like difficult, but then you were blown away instantly.
I never wanted to leave the teachings that I can remember. There's no point that I ever said, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Like in my heart or my mind, I don't ever remember feeling that. I mean, there have been doubts always. I mean, of course, I'm human. So there's going to be doubts that actually, into your mind, and Satan's going to always be, playing with that too. So in those moments of doubt, all I did was for me, I would go back to the teachings on the tree of life. There are particular like teachings that become like an anchor, if you will.
Oh.
And let me explain. Let me see if I can explain. So the tree of life is something that nobody's been able to understand, right? Or explain in a very, decent way in any way. The tree of life, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And the fact that I can explain that, not just that it can be taught to me, but I personally can explain in detail so clearly using the scriptures perfectly what the tree of life is in Genesis, through the Old Testament, right? The time of the first coming, all the way to the time of Revelation. And it's the exact same understanding. And I can literally understand what the tree of life is today and how it is that, right? How the reality actually is that, and why it makes sense that it was that in, Genesis. And then the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, when like Daniel chapter 4, when King Nebuchadnezzar is likened to a tree, things like this. And when it talks about like Deuteronomy 32, that their grapes are filled with poison, that they're like a vine, all these things. Jesus calling himself a true vine, the tree, calls himself life. He calls himself the tree of life, right? You got the parable of Matthew 13, 31 and 32, where the kingdom of heaven is like a seed that grows into a tree. The birds of the air come and perch in the branches. That is the tree of life with the spirit coming. Like, just so simple. So for me, when I had those moments of doubt, which in the beginning, they're probably much more prominent. And then as time goes on, because you overcome all those doubts, you just don't have them anymore. There's still little things that might come up from time to time, but for the most part, it's like the big waves have gone. You've answered all those doubts through, understanding. It's not like you just get rid of them, but there's an answer for them. And that's what causes them to go away. So knowing that the tree of life, that this teaching of Shincheonji is the only teaching in the world that can give the complete understanding from Genesis to Revelation about the tree of life, knowing that in my heart and my mind, and how clear and how easy it is to explain it, a mystery that's been 6,000 years. And all of a sudden I can explain it to somebody in 5 minutes, simply in a way that perfectly makes sense of the Bible. That to me proves that anything else attached to that teaching has to be true as well. If that teaching is true, then the source where it came from has to be true. If that's true, then the fulfillment of Revelation has to be true. So it's like an anchor. That's what would always like just cause me to, any of those doubts would just fade away, because that teaching is unbreakable. Right? Just like it says, I think it's like, what?
It's so refreshing to hear that you've had these doubts, that you've had your struggles with these things as well. And thank you for pointing out that you are human, because I think maybe at this point, our listeners think that you're a Bible. And I'm sure now they're also wondering, like, what is this teaching that you're talking about? This is coming up at some point, right? In the series. I mean,
Which
one? The whole tree of life and tree of knowledge of good and evil. I know that we did a parable about the tree, but I don't think we went like all the way from Genesis to, the whole Bible, 9 yards.
Definitely something we could do. It's like, I guess it'd be like a special lesson sometimes.
I want them to look forward to it, You're throwing out verses like, they're just coming out of like your ears and your nose, and do you do anything in particular to do that? To like, do you have a special technique for memorizing these verses, or did it really just come from being an instructor for this long?
Little everything, I guess. You do study. That's one of the things when you're a student, you're studying. So you have to memorize in order to go through the classes. We have tests, right? So you do have to memorize certain verses. So that's just one way, just actually memorizing them, but then using them. It's just like almost anything else in the world. When you learn something, one of the best ways to remember it is then to, right away, if you could teach it to somebody else. So if you have the ability to teach this, that's the best way to actually, learn. Because if you're going to teach somebody, you want to know what you're talking about. So you have to prepare. And I've done things like flashcards and things like that, just because I personally want to remember random verses when I'm reading. Because I like, when you read the Bible, there's like a verse that come up, man, that's such a cool verse, and so I want to remember it. So I'll write it down and then, look at it from time to time to try to remember it. But what do they say? There's 31,000 verses in the Bible. So, I mean, there's a lot.
How-
Oh my
There's
How
a
many
lot.
have you memorized, instructor?
Not that many, right? Not that many. But it is mostly just using them.
Do you have a life verse? I mean, we were just talking about 31,000 verses in the Bible and how, you've memorized a bunch of them, obviously, because
31,000 and I still don't have one.
right, because Tina was kind of struggling with this in the beginning where she, I think we were talking about life verses one time and everybody had one on the show. Actually, I don't. I have like a life chapter and I was just thinking about how when you know so many, how do you narrow it down to one that you call a life verse? Or maybe it changes from time to time. I don't know. Do you have a life verse at the moment? What's the sitch with the life verse?
There's many different verses that actually have helped me to overcome a lot of the difficulties or the hardships that you go through inside of, being a part of Shincheonji. So one of them in particular, Romans chapter 8, like the whole chapter is great, to be quite honest, but verses like 18 and on, where it says that, our present sufferings will not be, comparable to the glory that will be revealed in us, and we are going to be those people that actually are, used by God in a very amazing way. So being a part of Shincheonji, as I said, it's not always the easiest thing in a lot of ways because of how, how much evil things are said about it and how negative it's said. And it's like no amount of you telling people your experience or what you see as the truth of it, they just won't listen. They just believe all the other stuff. It's really crazy, but it's the most beautiful thing. Like, honestly, being a part of, I can't even imagine my life not knowing this truth or having to give it up, So when they try to destroy it, which is what they're trying to do. I mean, they've had campaigns that say, destroy Shincheonji, kill Shincheonji, that type of thing. It's really hurtful because this means so much to me, so much. So verses like that, or why we're doing what we're doing, that's the thing. I mean, it's a lot of work because we're working from early morning till late at night. Sometimes we are, and I do it because I want to, not because I'm forced to. I do it because I really think that this is important. And so the more people that we can reach, the more work that we can do, that type of thing, especially since I have the ability to be able to teach. So, giving that opportunity, but remembering why we're doing it. So Revelation chapter 21, verses 1-6 are just incredible. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away and there was no longer any sea.
You mentioned that a lot.
Yeah. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven. So now God is dwelling with men. And he says that he will dwell with them and he will be their God and they will be his people. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning.
I like
or
that
crying
one.
or pain. It's beautiful. It's
That
beautiful.
one.
We can move on to the question that came in from our listener. Okay. And I mean, we're going to switch gears here a little bit. And his name is Tom. He's an avid listener of the podcast. And he sends us a message. It's probably not something that we normally discuss on this series anyway. I mean, we did an old series before where we were discussing more like, personal questions or situations that our listeners were going through. And since we started Road to Revelation, we've been kind of focusing on this testimony and the parables and such. But, I think this is going to be a little throwback to that. And I'm curious how you're going to kind of take this. Anyway, okay, long intro. This is coming from Tom, and it reads, "Hi, Sam, Tina, and Instructor Aaron. Thank you for facilitating the podcast faithfully. I enjoyed your topic last Monday with Migo about death and resurrection. I am curious about how I apply it in other facets of my life, especially my relationship with my parents and my romantic relationship. Just a caveat, this relationship is not promiscuous." I don't know why he feels the need to clarify that. Okay, "I seek God and his word. I find comfort in knowing his word, However, I find myself hypocritical because I still see myself angry, in pain, and sometimes vengeful from all the unrecognized traumas I have enabled in my life. Those became learned behavior. Most of those are defense mechanisms. I do not want to blame, but I always talk about these with my parents. They have a hard time digesting my feelings. Stuff is shrugged off. They think I'm just overthinking, and we always fight. I attract liars and abusive people in my romantic relationships. I realized those are patterned behaviors from my parents that I despise. Destiny is funny because what I loathe is where I am trapped now. I tried making Jesus the center of my relationships, but it seems people I am around are callous and I cannot persuade them to have the same joy in my pursuit or endeavor. I want to die in the flesh so the spirit can be alive and not be distracted by worldly stimulations. How can I consolidate my situation to the perception of dying in the flesh and being alive in spirit? Will I not make them feel left out, if ever? Thank you, and more power. That is coming from Tom. Okay, now that I gave it a second read, because I was going through this earlier and I was like, are we going to talk about romantic relationships today? But there's actually a huge spiritual aspect to this.
Yeah.
Instructor Aaron, right?
Yeah, I see. When I first hear it, it sounds like he's got, definitely emotional issues, baggage, if you will, from things that happened in his past. Apparently from his parents. I don't know what kind of relationship that he might have had with his parents growing up, but it sounds like maybe there was some, abuse and things of that nature of it could be between them two, or it could be
Seems like
between,
it.
so we don't, I mean, I wouldn't be able to, I don't want to speculate because I don't know, really what's going on. I definitely need much more information. I'm not a psychologist, right? I'm not a psychiatrist. So I wouldn't be able to diagnose this person in any way, but I have done a lot of counseling. We do that a lot with students. Of course, we have to counsel with all kinds of things because they go through so many problems, so many difficulties. So I've heard a lot of things and I've, seen a lot of things in my life. And I think that the best thing that, anyone can do is to get help if they have difficulties, like actual professional, help, to talk to somebody, talk to somebody that you can build a relationship with, someone that you can trust, someone who knows what they're talking about.
I just want to share something to you both and to Tom as well, because this is something I think a huge part of it was resurrected was my relationship with my mom, Instructor Aaron. And this I can say because it was actually my sister who told me about it. And it was my mom who said that ever since I started studying the word, she's just seen so many, I guess you'd say improvement. We don't really have the best relationship, and Sam knows that. But the pandemic, and even more so when I started Bible study with Sam, she's noticed a big difference. And I tell Sam all the time how it's really improved my relationship with my family, especially my mom.
Yeah, you guys spend time together all the time, which I didn't even know you didn't do before.
Oh my gosh, Instructor Aaron, I could not be around her for more than an hour. Like it was that kind of, and I have a lot of resentment too, like so many of it. Like I was asked to do a lot of things that I just didn't want to do. And yeah, growing up, I had a lot of resentment. Yeah, there was a little physical, Filipino parents, first thing they see when they want to hit you. I've been hit so many times too, but yeah, growing up, I held a lot of grudges, but I just like, for some reason, I know it's God's work. He led me to this day when, maybe studying the word was the way for me to let all of that go. My big revelation tonight is my mom just told my sister that Sam was a big, she's a big, ano yung word, Mama? Is
a good
really ruining the moment, Tina.
she's one of the reasons why I am what I am now.
Oh my gosh, no,
like,
that
a beautiful
influence.
Beautiful influence on me.
I do not take credit for that. I absolutely think this has everything to do with, I think we're like drawing closer to God by studying his word, because as we've heard so many times on this show, God is the word. And that whole language of like being born again of the word. I mean, I understand that to mean the more you learn about this stuff, it actually changes you.
Yeah.
And so it is
So
not me, but I am 100% agree. I love that we're doing it together.
yeah.
You know, I mean, who knew that when we started co-hosting the show that it would come to this, right?
Mm.
And I'm so grateful for all of that. But
So
yeah.
so
But don't tell
Tom,
your mom, don't tell your mom and your sister that. Like, I mean, make them believe that it's all me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, let's not do
because
anything
she
about
totally
it.
loves her Instructor Aaron. But like what
Instructor
going
Aaron,
back
I
to
get food now every weekend from
Nice
Tina's
food.
mom, and she is a great cook. So I like
I
to
got
keep
her
it that
supply
way.
too, Instructor Aaron. But like Tom, I somehow feel where you're coming from. And we're I'm just putting it out there. Um
Yeah, you guys are right. I mean, I also, it definitely changed me. I had a lot of, I mean, I think everyone, right? Nobody's going to grow up perfect, and you're going to have situations and difficulties and things like that. And knowing that there's something like really that's this great, knowing something that's so big that's happening, it kind of does put things in perspective. Remember one of the guests that they said, when we talk about these things, everything seems so small, right?
Yes, jam, our
Yeah,
jam. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true. Like it does help you to kind of let go of some things because it's not as important anymore. It just for some reason when you realize that this world is not everything and that there is something greater and there is a God, and that God is also wanting you to be forgiving. We have to be forgiving, right? It's one of the things that we have to learn what to do, which is really easy to say, not always easy to do, right? Very difficult to do. But if you want to be forgiven, you must be able to learn how to forgive others too. So knowing that and then having that in your mind. And, it's funny. They always say things like brainwashing, right? They always throw that term around all the time, brainwashing this, brainwashing that. But if you really think about it, if the word of God is water, right? The water of life, right? And Jesus says, you are clean because the word I've spoken to you. And we're supposed to put God's word in our hearts and in our minds, right? We're supposed to be a new creation. Then really that's what we're doing through the word of God. We are cleansing ourselves, right? We are washing our brains and our hearts. And when you have more of God's word inside of you, the word leads you. You're guided by the word. So if you don't have any of God's thoughts inside of you, then what thoughts are you going to have? You're going to have the thoughts of the world. And the thoughts of the world, a lot of it is self-righteousness, greed, self-importance, all those things, right? And so that's how you react to things. It's all self-centered. It's your world. But when you realize that you are just a tiny little fraction, a part of this incredible, world of God, then you kind of it puts it in perspective, I guess, a little bit more. So you're able to forgive. Now, does that mean that you just let people abuse you all the time and things like that? No, of course not. I mean, you don't put yourselves in those situations. You try to get out of those situations if possible, things like that. But I'm thankful to hear that, from your parents as well, from you and that relationship that you had. And I would hope that that's what this does for a lot of people, learning this word, and the more of the word you have inside of you, the more it guides you, right? God is the word. Jesus is the word. So when they say, you will be in me and I will be in you, right? And Jesus says, if my words remain in you, right, then you can ask whatever you wish. So if we have that word remaining in us, it guides us, it leads us. And then you start basing decisions and thoughts, not just on your own thoughts, not on the worldly thoughts, but it really does make that bracelet, right? What would Jesus do? Right. That bracelet comes up, but it's true. It's true. You really start to think about it in a different way.
Yeah. And I think you're maybe now touching on the whole dying to I think
Yourself?
Tom
Dying to the
phrased it
flesh?
as dying in the flesh, which sounds like,
Yeah. When
but
you first said that, I was a little concerned, but I think that's what you mean. I think he means dying to the flesh, right?
right,
Yeah.
dying to the flesh, dying to ourselves. I mean, these
Sure.
are words that we see in the Bible. And I guess I was thinking about that too while I was reading this. Yeah, because you hear that a lot. We need to die to our flesh, and we need to die to
Sure.
ourselves, which kind of sounds like suppress anything that will give you joy and pleasure, because it's not good for you. And we're now supposed to be doing completely different things, which I'm sure is not what it means. But I guess if we can elaborate on that a little bit, like, how can we do that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I guess it is and it isn't, because when you start to realize that you're getting your joy from something that is not beneficial, and it doesn't it's not a sustainable joy. It's not something that is, a positive joy. You know what I think about it as, like, just an analogy, energy. Okay. For example, in your body, when you want to be energetic, there's ways of doing it naturally, which is much better for your body and it lasts longer. Or you can just, drink an energy drink, right? And an energy drink, it'll give you energy for that moment, but then when you come down, it's even worse. And it's also worse for your body. So think about that in the same way as like joy. If you are trying to gain joy by just being attached to the world and doing the worldly things that make you joyous, it's the same thing. They're fleeting, right? They're not immortal. They're not, imperishable.
They're temporary.
Yeah. It's all temporary. It's all perishable. But if you can draw your joy from something that is eternal, right? Then you are going to be shifting.
Is eternal.
Yeah. Well, like God's kingdom, like thinking about heaven, and like the real joy of doing the work of God. That's what gives me joy. Being able to, when this kingdom does well, when I see somebody come to the knowledge of truth, when when I'm a part of something, of one of the organizations that we're doing, when we're doing these events and seeing it, like it's just so incredible. It's like, I can't explain the joy that you realizing that God is actually at some point going to be ruling over this world, and it's not going to be greed and money and selfishness. It's not going to be death and destruction and disease. That's what gives me joy. It's not the new car that I bought or the new phone that I got. I don't have a new car, just, using it as an example, but that's what I mean. Like, it's not those things that bring me joy anymore. They don't mean it doesn't have the same, feel anymore.
Satisfaction.
And I don't think that that's possible to do without the word. I really don't. I don't think it's something that you can just, give up. I think it's something that has to be, it's like almost a learned thing, right? You have to overcome it. So not to say people can't give up certain things or greed or selfish. That's not what I'm saying, but just where that joy comes from. Like, you can't really be able to tap into the joy of something that you don't know about or don't understand.
Right. If you want it to be sustainable.
Anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's touch on this part, because this is, I think, maybe, the spiritual side of this whole situation too, because Tom says, I tried making Jesus the center of my relationships, but it seems people I am around are callous and I cannot persuade them to have the same joy in my pursuit or endeavor.
Right.
Which I think, me too, when I was starting to come to the faith and I was getting very excited about it and I wanted to talk about it to everyone that I bumped into pretty much.
Right, yeah.
How was that?
It's very hit or miss. Some people will be very excited for you. Some people,
it's true.
Right. And, this has come up in past episodes too. Like, how do you share the joy of this faith to the people who are maybe not ready to accept it?
Yeah. That's
without being disappointed.
Right.
Because I think that's where Tom is at. Like, I really try, but I don't think it's working. And I'm at my wit's end.
Well, I mean, there's, unfortunately, in this world today, because the way that the churches have been for a while, a lot of controversy, a lot of, the opposite of persecution. Like, they're persecuting non-believers now in a lot of ways, like they judging and that kind of thing. So there's been a lot of negative. And then, of course, science being able to kind of crush a lot of the old ways of thinking about God and the Bible, being able to, tear apart the Bible itself or Genesis and things like that. And because people don't have the proper way of understanding the Bible, they can lose their faith, right? They can start to look at Christianity as pretty ignorant, foolish. Like, if you still believe in the Bible in this world today, then you must be, crazy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But again, it's only because they don't know the real truth of it. They don't know that Genesis is what it really means, and things in, Revelation is not what they think it means. So when you try to share this with people, there's a lot of people that just don't want to hear it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want, especially it depends on how you're sharing it too. Are you being boastful about it? Are you being, insensitive to the people around you too? Because maybe they don't want to hear it, but you're bringing it up, so they don't want to be around you if that's all you're going to talk about. And Paul says, when I was around a Jew, I acted like a Jew. When I was around a Gentile, I acted like a Gentile, because he wanted to be able to, have a relationship with them to buy their hearts. If you are just slamming them with it and not giving them a chance to breathe, or if it becomes something that, they're afraid that anytime that you're around them, that's all you're going to hear, then that would be very difficult for them.
Yeah.
Right. For them as well.
So you're saying, Instructor Aaron, that Tom maybe needs to learn to adjust a little to.
I would have to know what he's doing. Like, that's the thing, that the little message is so small. I don't know what the problem is. Like, why are they having difficulties with them? Is it because that's all he's talking about? Or is it because they're atheists? Is it because they had difficulties about Christianity? Or, what? I don't know any of the details, so it's hard to, really explain.
Yep.
But on my own personal, my family knows that I'm a part of Shincheonji. But when I'm around them, I don't bring it up, because I already did. I talked to them about it. It's not something that they wanted to, certain ones didn't want to hear it. As a matter of fact, there was a lot of persecution in the beginning, went on for almost 10 years. Eventually that all changed. Yeah, we got back into the persecution. That all changed to where now, like, I have good relationships with them, very good relationships with them, but I don't bring it up, because I know if I do, it's not going to be a positive thing. So why do that? I would rather have a relationship now, so that when this truth is made known throughout the whole world, they would be like, oh, hey, this is what you were talking about. I'd be like, yeah, yeah.
Even in my experience, I can only say so much, and you have to respect where people are at, because I think we all have our time. God calls us at different times, and you have to respect that process for each person. I mean, before I decided to check out this whole faith thing, nothing anyone told me could have changed my mind. I had to make that decision for myself. And I mean, there were people around me who were faithful and religious, had no interest in it. But when it happened, it happened. And sure, you can be that influence around these people, but I don't think you can push them too much. But also make them feel like, hey, whenever you're ready, I'm here.
That's it right there.
Yeah. And just
letting it be available.
Right. And just keep showing those good changes to them, because I think those really speak the loudest. Actions speak louder than words, right?
That's it.
So yeah,
you have to be the light of the world, be the pleasing aroma, if you will, right, of Christ, right, in the world.
Aroma.
That's what it says, right?
Sound like
you're like
food.
We're like the incense, that they, but everything that can make the world a better place. Like, the whole point is, if you can make the world a better place, like, if you care, and this would be like just a really great thing in general, but if you cared more about the people around you than you do yourself, and if everybody else did that, then everybody would be taken care of. Right? If it was just us three and I cared more about you two than I did myself, I would do everything I could to make sure you guys were happy and taken care of. And if you guys cared more about the other two than yourself, then you would do the same. If everybody does that, and that's really what God's kingdom is really about. It's not about yourself. Whatever God gives you, you're meant to use to help others. You're meant to use to, make this world a better place. So that's really the essence of it. So like you said, if you can do that and show them that you're a good person, and the reason you're a good person is because of this, then a lot of people want that. They want that in their lives. They're like, that's one thing that actually has happened. People have asked me, how do you believe so strongly? I want that in my life of faith. I don't have that. I want to believe in God and Jesus so much, but there's all these things that I just can't believe in, or I've had doubts here and fears there. How do you have such strong faith, and why? Like, how can I have that? And there's only the only way is by knowing the truth. That's it. By knowing the truth and seeing how perfect it is. Because honestly, in my mind, if this is not the truth, and maybe shocking to hear this from some people, but if the teachings of Shincheonji are not the truth, in my eyes, there is no truth in religion.
Wow.
religiosity.
Strong, Instructor Aaron. No, I mean, I just reacted that way. By the way, I mean, I think you feel like maybe you feel the need to kind of preface the things that you say with like, I know this is going to shock you. This is going to shock some people.
I'm so used to it.
I mean, we're
guess.
kind of used to it now. So you don't have to, give us a warning on that.
I'll just drop the hammer then. All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tom, I hope, our little discussion on your message helps you in some way. Again, as Instructor Aaron pointed out, we wish we had some more details, specifics, and maybe we could have addressed them better. But with what we had, this is what we got, Tom. But Tom and I are friends. Like, we go back and forth and message a lot about our episodes and stuff. So yeah.
So Tom, whenever you're ready.
Parents aren't perfect. I'm a parent and I'm not perfect. One of my fears is that my children will grow up mad at me for the decisions that I made and, affected them and things like that. So I understand his parents are not perfect. That's probably why they're getting into arguments, because he's maybe possibly blaming them for what he's become. They feel like they might have done the best that they could, and at some point you do have to take responsibility for your own life. There's a lot of tragic things that happened to me in my younger life, but I've gotten to the point where I kind of made it into a story where it's about somebody. It's like just somebody else. It's not even my life anymore. Like, why, really cool little thing that it's just one of those philosophies. I don't know where it came from, but it's one of the philosophies. It says, if you're angry or upset, it's because you're living in the past. Right? If you're angry or upset, you're living in the past because you're thinking about all those things. If you're fearful or have anxiety, it's because you're living in the future. Right? You're worried about all the things of the future. But if you're content, then because you're living right there in the present. Now, of course, not in all situations. If you're like in a bad situation, I mean, it's not that. But I mean, in general, like right now, if I don't think about what's going to happen tomorrow, all the things I got to do tomorrow, if I don't think about the things that I messed up in the past, but I just really focus on what we're doing, you can be happy. So
no, that's a good one.
Responsibility of your life is important too.
Yeah. Generally speaking, yes, I think that is true. A lot of anger, anxiety, all that stuff is because we're all over the place and not really focusing
thinking about
on
the conversations that you had. That I should have said that. Why did I say that?
Oh my gosh, I do that all the time. This has been our one-on-one with Instructor Aaron. Before we wrap that up, though, I know we focused a lot on your being a Bible instructor, your journey, your faith journey, coming to this point with being in Shincheonji and all those things, and the church and what it's teaching. But I thought maybe we can throw in some super casual questions to, just wrap up this little intimate time that we had with Instructor Aaron, because I don't know when else I can squeeze in a question like, do you like pineapple on your pizza? Things like that. So do you?
Sometimes. It's not my favorite, but I'm not completely anti. I won't throw anybody out the door because they brought it in my house. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
Okay.
So because I don't really eat pineapple very often either, but it's, actually if I do have it on there, I like it with sausage, like Italian sausage, black olives, and jalapeno peppers.
You gotta have the salty sweet. It's got to be salty sweet. It can't be sweet pizza.
A little spicy with the jalapeno pepper. Oh, so good. My wife's the one that actually turned me on to that. I'd never had it before until then, but
okay. Yeah, that sounds good. What are you watching on Netflix right now? Do you even have time to watch Netflix?
I do. I take the time to do it because I do like to, decompress from time to time of dealing with students and teachings and things like that. Cause it's a lot of stress from other people, the problems that they have too. So sometimes I like to I read a lot. I've been reading a lot of, recently I got back into the Foundation series from Isaac Asimov. So I've been reading a lot of that.
Sci-fi.
Yeah. Sci-fi. It's pretty cool. Let's see, as far as like Netflix, I'll watch occasionally like Korean dramas with my wife if she has them on, but for the most part, I use that just to try to learn. See, it's funny because like a lot of what I learn in this, and then when you watch certain shows and stuff, it always seems to come up anyway. So there's certain things that like you're like, wow, that's really interesting because you can like kind of tie it in with stories of the Bible or things like that.
No,
just little things, from time to time, like even the book that I'm reading. The book that I'm reading has a lot to do with, the galactic empire and how, man will spread out throughout the universe or throughout the galaxy and things like that. And
Mm.
I mean, just little random things, and you wonder, like, is that really what could it possibly be like that, in the future?
I think when you start studying the Bible, you start to recognize how a lot of pop culture draws from biblical themes.
Oh yeah.
A lot, right? You just don't know it because you don't know the Bible. Not that I, know the Bible, but anyway, just a
No, and
little
even like little
observation.
sayings, little sayings too, like taking it to heart, right? Or it's been written in stone, things like that.
Oh,
They come
oh,
from the
like
Bible.
things
Yeah.
that we say in normal conversation are actually from the Bible. Uh-huh. Yeah, things like that. Okay, next question. What is the best fashion advice that you ever got?
Fashion advice.
I mean, if you guys are on YouTube right now, Instructor Aaron is wearing pink. Okay. And I always admire men who rock pink. It's awesome.
It's a
You look
good color
great.
for me. I don't know. It matches
It
my skin
is.
tone. I don't know.
You know what? It is. It is. It brings out like the blush in you or something. It's
Right.
nice.
Only
I
real
think that
man
was you
can
guys.
pull
You
off
guys bringing out the
pink.
blush in me. Other than fashion advice.
If at all. If at all.
Gosh, I don't know. I really don't.
Does your wife tell you how to dress? I mean, is she, does she shop for you? Does she tell you to try on this
No,
stuff?
not fully. I mean, we'll go shopping together from time to time, and she'll tell me if something looks, decent or not. But
Yeah.
I have to be honest. I have most of my clothes that I've owned for years, years and years and years. Like I don't really buy. I'll buy, occasionally something especially if I need it, during the winter or something like that. But and a lot of it, like even this shirt, I got it Goodwill. I like going to shop at places like that, and got it for like $5, but it was, brand new.
Oh my gosh, you and Tina can hang out. She's like
Yeah.
the master
Thrift
thrifter.
queen.
Yeah. If things free up a little bit and all of these, pandemic restrictions are lifted and you get a chance to travel, where are you going?
Outside of Korea, you mean?
Yes.
I would
Let me
love
guess. San Diego. Just kidding.
that place is always on my heart. Oh man. Yeah. If I could go back anytime, because then we can go visit, family and friends when we're there too. So that's always, there. There's actually, I really want to see many places in the world. I want to go travel through Europe. My wife's had a chance to live there. I've never had a chance to go there. I'd love to see the old buildings in Europe, but I'd love to see the nature. So going to places that have, really beautiful nature like Hawaii. So many. That's actually, that's my hope. My hope is that when all is said and done, that this will give that opportunity where I'll be traveling around, teaching the word to every, country I can, step my foot in. So that's a hope. And then take time to go snowboarding when I get a chance. And all the different mountains. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Instructor Aaron. I'm not very good with lightning rounds. And so, I thought you did great. And I really enjoyed this time of just like being able to chat with you. Yes, it involved a lot, about your faith and Shincheonji and all those things, but just to get to know you a little bit more because we don't really get to chat outside of the podcast, right? And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are wondering too, about this stuff. And so thank you for being so down. And
problem.
I hope you guys all enjoyed that and go be a pleasing aroma. That is, I love that. I'm gonna move away from like go be salt and light. I'm gonna be go be a pleasing aroma. Go do it. I love it. And we'll see you next time on the Narrow Door Podcast. Bye guys.